mentioned 6 teams reporting for duty. In the next 3 days, Carolina, Arizona, New England, Seattle, Rams, and Niners. Let's start with opening statements. Lewis, give me an opening statement on the start of the NFL season.
Eric Bieniemy's influence on the Kansas City Chiefs offense from a mentality standpoint cannot be understated. This was a targeted reacquisition of Eric Bieniemy being brought back by Andy Reid. He wants this football team to display toughness up front on the offensive line in particular. First, establish the running game. Second, look, they need Patrick Mahomes is going to need some time to really work his way into form. I think you will see an offense that from a run-pass ratio and from a philosophical approach will look much different than any Andy Reid team that you have seen in recent years. This will be a team that's going to lean on this offensive line and running game early and often.
I think that's fascinating. They're one of the most interesting teams as the season gets underway. Remember, they open on a Monday night against Denver, and Mahomes says he wants to be back for that game. But somehow I watched that team last year, and I feel like going into this season, even if he's healthy, they're the 3rd best team in the AFC West.
And you're saying even if he's healthy, as we're watching him run around with a knee brace.
Right.
And you look at a 6-win team a year ago. Yes, they brought in Kenneth Walker, and the run game should change dramatically. But did they do enough outside of that to mirror this team being a contender in the AFC? Like, my mind is telling me, like, there's not enough on the roster. My heart is saying, if Patrick Mahomes is going to be out there, hell, they're going to be contenders
But you know why your heart's saying that? Because we've seen it so many times.
Yeah.
Every time we've thought, oh, the Chiefs put a fork in them, they prove that they're not done. For me, when I have full confidence in the Chiefs, as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy and on the field, and because we don't know exactly when he will be there, it's hard to know exactly what this team will be.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you look at the Patriots' dynastic run with Brady and Belichick, it really is 2 runs.
Right.
Right? It was the beginning era, and then it was the second era, and in the middle there was a little bit of a dip. They never got bad, but they weren't a championship team while they were rebuilding around Brady. I think that's where, personally, that's where I think the Chiefs are right at this minute.
Yeah.
Let's see what it looks like on the field. Let's keep it moving. Who is next up? Kmart, what is your opening statement on the start of the season?
Oh, I don't have a statement. I have a massive question.
Go.
Is this the year that Josh Allen proves he's finally the guy? Because according to top evaluators, he's the best quarterback in the NFL, not Patrick Mahomes. All eyes will be on him and new head coach Joe Brady. I want to see how he puts his stamp on this team. And will they hit the ground running in training camp with the weapons that they have to eventually get over that proverbial hump?
What do you think, Lewis? It's his guy now who is the coach. Not that he didn't like Sean McDermott, but now he's got his guy in there. Sort of feels like it's like Butch and Sundance, and let's see if they can finally do it in Buffalo.
Yeah, look, I personally still feel that it's the Patriots' division to lose. I think they have done enough this offseason to really go ahead and level up that roster to the point where now they'll be able to compete with anybody in the AFC and NFC overall. Look, I think Josh, quarterback's a very dependent position, right? Football's a very dependent game. Josh has made enough plays in big moments to where he has put the ball in position for some skilled players to make some plays that they need to make that maybe would have changed the whole tenor of the discussion surrounding him this year. And that's just a fact. I think he's done enough. Look, last year notwithstanding, he didn't play his best against Denver.
Yeah.
Okay, but years prior, the 2 games against Kansas City, one in Buffalo, one in Kansas City, he put the ball in the hands of guys like Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, and they dropped passes in key moments. He can't do both. He is plenty capable of taking this team to the promised land personally, I believe.
And he always has been. When McDermott was there, they've had enough, to your point. They just haven't made the plays in the biggest moments. And that's the difference from being able to hoist the Lombardi trophy or being the team that's firing their head coach and hoping that Joe Brady now comes in and gives them that little bit of jolt that they need to get over the top.
And that's the difference between Allen being one of the great players of his generation or being one of the great players of all time. Last opening statement, J-Man.
I'm looking at A.J. Brown, and I think he is going scorched earth in his revenge tour. He's going to be like that bad kid in the summer who's been forced to stay inside and do his summer reading. Well, now he's coming back to the playground to reassert his dominance. Being moved on from by Philadelphia, trade him to the New England Patriots. He's going to be with a superstar quarterback in Drake May and an offensive coordinator in Josh McDaniels that knows how to get his key players the ball in positions to succeed. So I'm looking for a big season from A.J. Brown this year.
That's fascinating, and Lewis just said he thinks that that's the team to beat in the AFC East, and I think that's very interesting. And we'll do them in a minute, but I want to start actually with his old team. I want to start with the team that A.J. Brown left behind, because his old coach, Nick Sirianni, never appreciated, entering year 6 in Philly. All he's done is win, coming off his team's late season collapse last year. But again, there they were winning the division in the playoffs. This is some quotes that we got from him yesterday that I think are fascinating. He said, quote, "I can't control what anybody thinks or feels, and that's okay. If even a second of my time is being worried about, hey, I wish they appreciated this more, well, then I just lost a little bit of time that I could be doing something else that really matters. I think there's growth in finding yourself through the journey that you've gone through to get to a point where, like, yeah, should we be appreciated more? Who gives a bleep? We've done a good job, and we want to continue to do a good job." That's, as a general rule, not the way most people's minds actually work and function, but it's probably the right thing for him to say. Why are you shaking your head like that?
I think that sounds good to say. But knowing how passionate and fiery and sensitive Nick Sirianni is, I don't actually believe that. I think that's what you're supposed to say.
Right.
And I think I do think, to your point, he is underappreciated. I think this team, what they've been able to do, you tell me you've gone to 2 Super Bowls in, 3 years? And in the last Super Bowl that you won, you completely mauled the team that was going after a dynasty. Yeah, I think some more respect should be put on the Philadelphia Eagles. And every year we have this conversation about, like, well, how's the quarterback? Should the head coach still be there? So, but I think if you are the head coach of a team, you have to say who gives a bleep about what anybody else thinks. That's the message that you got to have internally.
Yeah, look, I think this goes back to how Nick was hired in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that he wasn't their first choice, that's just a fact. He was way down the list in terms of people that they interviewed and people they were trying to, coax into coming and coaching the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think it's one of these situations where a lot of people look at this, whether they will admit it or not, they look at this situation as such that, look, they think that the Eagles win in spite of Nick Sirianni, not because of him. And they don't really give him a lot of credit. Look, every conversation when we talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, who do we talk about? We're talking about the team builder. We talk about the general manager. We talk about
constructed,
how this football team. It almost reminds me of the conversation surrounding the Dallas Cowboys back when Jimmy Johnson left and Barry Switzer came in. It's just like, you know what? They probably felt like they could plug anybody into that head coaching position and they would have won. Nick doesn't get the credit for being the general of that football team like most other head coaches do, and I think he realizes that. And therefore, that's why every year we're talking about, despite that, as Kimberly just said, they've had, multiple 14-3 seasons?
Yeah.
They mauled the hell out of the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl and came very close to beating them in another. And the two people that get the most criticism in this organization are Nick and Jalen. It's always, is Nick coaching for his job? Or now they're going to be looking for a new quarterback? And I think a lot of that starts with how this run kind of started.
And the guy that they're putting in the Hall of Fame is the general manager.
That's right.
That doesn't usually happen.
That's right.
With teams like this.
What's so astonishing for me, you just said it, what you ended on with Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, where both of them are coaching for their job or both of them are underappreciated. If Jalen Hurts isn't as good as a quarterback as some of us believe him to be, Super Bowl MVP, then Nick Sirianni should be getting more credit for having the success he's had with a quarterback that really is an elite when we talk about it. If Nick Sirianni is a clown and he's this type of head coach, they're winning in spite of him, well, then the quarterback should get more credit for being a great leader on this team and for continuing to win no matter what's gone on the outside. Because when I look at both of these guys, the success they've had in their career, what else are we leveling or looking at when we're ranking these guys? Isn't production the number one thing? Isn't wins the number one thing? Because when you look at Nick Sirianni's name and his winning percentage, he's next to guys like Belichick and Don Shula and John Madden with the success he's been able to have. And yet the conversation is, if he doesn't win, is he going to be moved on from? It's a real conversation.
You just answer your own question. It's not about wins and results, or else Jalen Hurts would be clear top 10, top 5 kind of quarterback. So I think with those two characters, I think they end up being graded on a curve.
Yeah, no question. That's exactly it. And not to mention the fact that the things that Jalen Hurts has overcome, if we're just talking about him, in terms of the amount of change as far as play callers, people in his ear, philosophical approaches, you know how much on a razor's edge that is. Those relationships with different people who are responsible for putting you in positions to succeed. And this year, he's in this situation once again. And if he comes out this year, but this conversation will never end because of how their careers started. Jalen was not a first-round pick. He was not.